Every child could sing verses about the Sky Ripper, but ancient codices held hints of other things. A stone that ate souls, a ruby that drank blood, a jewel only a righteous man could give away. Were all these things the Iblis stone? Long hidden in a buried temple? Another ancient item that was only resurfacing now? Drawn up from the deeps by the Emperor's horrific rituals? Get all the ingredients for a pretty nifty sword. His trusty old sword was always a little better when he sharpened it. The air here tasted bitter. The steps were too tall for a person. The entire place felt restless, like it had been vexed to nightmare under the dust, waiting for its hour to come around at last. Ravens were already here, cawing in frustration. They were still searching for a way in. Good. Then he hadn't come too late. Well, they really needed to redecorate anyway. so much. It was time to turn it into something he could use. Maybe I should follow my nose, thought Renato. A road less traveled. This could be fun. If it wasn't fatal, that is. Take a leap of faith, said the inscription. Renato wondered idly if people who had built these poles had really, really long tentacles. Nice. That could be useful.
The right jewel could really give you an edge. The wrong, well, it still looked pretty, didn't it?
Sharp? Check. Pointy? Check. Flexible? Check. What else do you need in a sword?
The Ravens at least could not get past this point. Obviously, the temple builders knew how to deal with tomb raiders. Renato hated cannon traps. Also, who reloaded these things anyway? He never figured that part out.
Energy spheres.
Easy to dodge, but boy do they sting if you didn't pay attention.
It was a stone of the purest blackness. It reflected no light, like a void made solid. Nervous, he picked it up. Who said that? It was the stone. Eager. Thirsty. Kill the Emperor's daughter. That seemed tempting and terribly wrong. Zenobia was the Emperor's greatest general and a potent witch. But they had been close once. And Renato wasn't sure he really wanted to be Emperor. Why not capture the core of Sky Ripper instead? It was the eye of a lost god torn out by the transcendent Emperor to power his greatest weapon. Put the core, said the stone anxiously. If it be death, I will give you the power to do what you want. Was he listening to a talking rock?
Ah, but the rock had a point. If the stone could truly turn him into a powerful warrior, he could defeat the Emperor with the very weapon the wicked old toad had sought for himself.
To be a hero, you had to sacrifice old friends sometimes, especially. Especially when they've become enemies.
As he placed the impossibly black crystal in his gauntlet, Renato had a sudden vision. Charred fields covered in dead ravens below a black sun.
Was it the time of the lost gods before the transcendent emperor? Was it the future? Feed these souls, it whispered. Take the power. He could feel the stone's hunger for souls. Its thirst for blood. All right, I get it. This was going to be interesting. Sometimes, Renato really hated inanimate objects.
He wished there were more pylons he could use the hook on. They really needed to construct additional pylons.
The ravens on Zenobia's island were no match for Renato. They screamed as the stones sucked out their souls. And with each death, he felt stronger. Take the power, the stone told him.
Firewalls only let you through if they think you're hot enough. The rock felt hot in his hand. He could feel its secret power. Zenobia was leading the Imperial Ravens here. She loved to be in the vanguard, where the danger was, where she needed her wits. Renato pitied whoever she was fighting, especially if it was him. This one looked familiar. Had he lost this one in a card game? Welcome back, he thought. Zenobia was waiting for Renato. She was alone, confident as always. Fire danced at the tips of her claws.
Are you here to surrender? She seemed as cocksure as he felt. But she didn't know he had the stone. And I've missed you too, love. He chuckled.
She spotted the stone and bolted without another word.
I need more materials, thought Renato. I wonder what happens if I go that way.
This jewel was more than sparkly. It had arcane power and an engraving. To Cindy.
Finally, Renato caught up to her. He had never seen her scared before. At school, she'd been the determined, brave one. Now her eyes were wide, frightened. He didn't like seeing her this way. "Kill her," whispered the stone. "You cannot win your rebellion without it. Please." "No," said Zenobia. "Not that way." Oh, they had been so close once. Could he really feed her soul to his demonic gem? But if he spared her, he would not get the full power of the stone. Oh, how could he be the hero he wanted to be? With a flick of his wrist, he slashed Zenobia's throat. Her eyes widened even more. And then the light went out of them. Renato felt amazing. Power was rushing into him like water from a burst dam. Oh, such brilliance, exulted the Iblis stone.
He felt a bit bad about killing her. He was pretty sure she still loved him. But needs must when the devil drives. Renato returns to the Farfarer and set a course for the Nexus. The Empire had a communication outpost there. He could call the Emperor directly.
It was time to seize the outpost and let the Emperor know what he had done. The Nexus was beautiful. He never realized how beautiful. Everything glowed. The wind was so sweet. The sun so soft. The stones so warm. The black raven feathers. Black feathers. Suddenly, his eyes are filled with them. He's falling through smoke under a dead sun. A voice calls him home. Is this a vision? Whose? Is it the time of the lost gods? Or the future? No matter. What mattered now was killing his way to the Imperial outpost and challenging the Emperor from there.
Fresh socks, thought Renato. Please be fresh socks.
This stone was incredibly valuable. Renato could sense it. Also, it still had its price tag. What was really fun was hooking yourself onto a moving ship.
Up ahead was Lapino. What was he doing here? Bernardo! Hey, buddy! Hey there, old buddy! Please don't kill me! Why would I kill you? Asked Bernardo, although he had been thinking about it. Well, you've become... no, I mean, no disrespect at all here. Kind of evil? Maybe you should, I don't know, go to the mountains to have a think? See if maybe you're sure the stone is not all that healthy a thing to keep? I suppose you wanted, Renato said, and poked Lapino in the chest for emphasis. Oh, had he just killed Lapino? Oh, damn it.
There was an inscription. Praise the sun.
Renato rampaged through the Imperial outpost like a water buffalo rampaging. At the last moment, he remembered not to kill the Far Speaker Toad. After all, he wanted a word with the Emperor.
But there was only silence. The Emperor was scared, like little girl.
Well, he would gather the rebel army and slaughter the Imperial fleet. Yes! Applauded the Iblistone. Tremendous. Then the Emperor would have to answer his Far Speaker, wouldn't he? Who are you? Asked a distant voice that sounded uncomfortably like Zenobia. What have you become? The mountains. Go to the mountains, urged another that sounded a bit like Lapino. Renato called the Rebel Council to let them know to gather their forces. Then he killed the Far Speaker Toad. Why? Well, because to make sure his sword was sharp. Oh no, that's awful. So no one else could use it. Yes, that's it. Then he set off for the ruins and the secret rebel base. The ruins were crawling with ravens. Probably looking for the secret base, Renato thought. But then he realized they're probably looking for me. They must be very scared of me. Well, here I am. You are the hottest warrior ever, whispered the Iblistone. And he had to agree with it, for once. Who was as good as Renato?
If they didn't want their things broken, they really ought to make them stronger. Well, he'd always wanted to do that. Zenobia, Hypatia, the kid's mother. Renato had never thought he'd date a librarian. He'd always figured himself for the barmaid type. But then, he'd never figured the library of Ubar would have comic books, or that Hypatia would know anything about them. He missed her. Renato was so happy. The stone was the best friend he'd ever had. Really? Who would bury such a treasure in the desert? Soon, he'd go rally the rebellion and usher a new age for the islands of Erda.
His mother had never let him wave his sword around at home. He guessed he was still compensating for that. Renato wondered if his future self had commissioned these poles.
Hope the other end of this portal wasn't suspended over the abyss.
This was much easier than free climbing.
Not everyone knew how to use magical gems. Of course, not everyone had magical gem gauntlets like he did.
Yes, please.
Urged the stone. Let me make you Emperor. Come to think of it, Renato thought as he put down another raven, why shouldn't I be Emperor? How did anybody get to be Emperor anyway? By making war. Not counting the transcendent Emperor, obviously, who had banished the lost gods in the start of time. Yes, he should be Emperor. He would make a great emperor. Right, Stone? Right, boss.
burnt fur. His. This is why heroes are called dashing, Renato thought. See? Dashing? Get it? Long stairs. So he was close to the rebel base. It was on fire. So far, so good. Renato had learned so much about... Ooh, what was it again? Renato remembered when he'd first stolen one of these. Good times. Renato strode into the council. Let's do this thing. Let's make me emperor. They looked confused and nervous. Ah, had he mentioned the emperor thing? Yeah, he meant to bring that up later. I mean, let's go win this rebellion. He waved his sword around encouragingly. They ran. Cowards. He'd stop them. He cut down a few to inspire the others. But soon, there was no one to cut down. Well then, he'd have to attack the fleet alone. More for me, he said. Unless it was the stone that said it. Traitors. Traitors, all of them. They'd run rather than following him, rather than cheering him. What should he do to the cowards? Anything he wanted to. After all, he was a true hero, the best warrior there ever was. No one could stop him now. But first, finish him. The Emperor, that is. Where was the rebel fleet? They weren't even trying an assault. They were going to miss a day in history. The downfall of this dynasty, and a new one to take its place. He didn't have to kill all the ravens. He could enslave them, and enslave the toads too. All the animals would worship him as a god, for he had once been a god. They would willingly give him their blood and their souls. And the world would change, would become familiar again.
He hadn't noticed that path before. Ooh, sparkly, thought Renato.
Renato was glowing with dark power. Already the sun had dimmed. He could do anything, he realized. He could wrap the island safely in smoke again. He was beyond a hero. He was going to become a god again. How odd, he thought, that the Iblis Stone had nothing to say about any of this. Well, no matter. Once he killed this petty Toad Emperor, he would bring back the Black Sun.
Imagine if you built a house in one of these things. Oh, it would be amazing. It would be like having a boat. Soon he'd confront the Emperor. Funny that this whole war had come about because the Emperor feared death. And now it was coming for him. There was some sort of lesson there, wasn't there?
He found the Emperor and the Council huddling by his ship, plotting. They saw him and cowered before him.
Back to hell, fiend.
Croaked the Emperor desperately.
In the name of the Transcendent Emperor!
Croaked the speaker. They held some arcane items he didn't recognize. He simply flexed his will and sucked their souls out of their bodies. And Iblis exulted. It is finished. And the void that had been a mere stone on a sword expanded. It stretched and ripped like a vast womb. And a gaze, black and pitiless as the sun, passed through the void into the land. And so time ended. And just like that, he was alive again, and back on the Farfarer, still fleeing burning Ubar. The book was still open before him. So, the book was a portal. It took you to the future, when your destinies would branch. He had failed and died 3 times, but he learned another true thing. The Iblis Stone was evil. It would try to corrupt anyone who used it. But he was starting to feel like he was getting the hang of this. There was a way through to victory. He could feel it. He just had to keep running the path of Destinies. With that, the book fluttered back to the beginning, and he fell into it. The clouds parted over the Isles of Boreas. It was time to choose. The rebellion was in trouble. Ravens were scouting for the secret rebel base. They needed a game-changer. Pieces of the Sky Ripper had surfaced. Or so a scholar in the mountains had told him. Surely the weapon that banished the lost gods could defeat the Emperor. Also, a temple had risen out of empty desert. The Iblis Stone was hidden there. It was a dangerous artifact. It could corrupt its user into a bloodthirsty monster. Maybe he could find a way to use it. To take its power without surrendering to its wickedness. And also, his old friend Lapino needed rescuing. Of course, Renato had a pretty strong suspicion that Lapino had betrayed the rebellion. But could Renato really leave an old friend to the Ravens? Ah, Lapino. Apparently, the Mad Rabbit had sold a Pegasus that he did not exactly own. Lapino always wiggled out of trouble, given time. But he was out of time. Lapino's frantic message said that the Ravens were going to kill him for being a rebel spy. And that he had a clever plan. If the fleet reached him first, they'd string him up for that. Never mind the winged horse. Or so Lapino had told him over the Far Speaker anyway. Lapino had apparently managed to confuse the judge by arguing that he hadn't actually stolen the winged horse. He'd only sold it. But wait, where was the prison? The village was empty. Had everybody fled the Ravens?